I think so. Oh, we're hot. We're up and running and live. All right, well, time change. It's not the time change. It's the St. Patrick's Day. I called it out. I called it out Sunday. Y'all take note of who's not here right now. And if you're watching on... Well, that's Jesse. Yeah, no, Jesse. Jesse's good. I'm not asking. I'm not asking. I told y'all I'm not going to ask. We won't say anything to you directly, but we're all assuming the worst. You should be here. Y'all bow your heads with me. Let's open in a word of prayer this evening. Father God, thank you for these Bible studies. Thank you for these evenings together with fellow believers where we can sharpen each other as we pursue the wisdom of your word. We ask, Lord, that you would fill us with your spirit, with your holiness, with your humility this evening as we try more and more to become more Christ-like through the study of your amazing word. God, just be with us these evenings and make us better Christians. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I think I've got one last Irish joke. Boy, I don't know. What was that, a groan? Did someone groan? All right, fine. Oh. So this old Irish potato farmer, I know, does it get any more stereotypical? This old Irish potato farmer who lived out in the countryside alone, didn't have any family left. All he had was his dog. And the dog died one day, and he took it, and he goes to his priest, and he says, Father, and I'll do my best Irish accent. He says, Father, my dog died, and he's the only soul I had in the world with me. What can we do for him? And the father said, Oh, no, I'm sorry. We're Catholic. We don't do anything for dogs. But there's a Baptist church down the street, and who knows what they believe? And he says, all right, fine. I'll take the dog down there. Do you think 10,000 is enough to cover the service? And he says, well, why didn't you say the dog was Catholic? Bring him on in. All right. 2 Samuel, looking at chapter 16 this evening. And do we remember where we're at? I've got to give myself a little bit of a refresher sometimes here. Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned, for I have changed against the commandment. Oh, no, that's 1 Samuel. Wow, we're way off there. I didn't have my bookmark in. So David is in exile. Absalom has taken it upon himself. He positioned some people and did it rather ingeniously. The way he did it, he invited a lot of people to Hebron. And he told David, he said, I'm going to make a sacrifice because I made an oath that if God would ever bring me back from exile in Geshur back to Jerusalem, that I would serve him through a sacrifice. And that's been a few years now. And David says, you know what? You go ahead, you fulfill this. And so he does. And he sends out word to a couple hundred people and says, listen, I'm going to Hebron and I'm going to have a sacrifice. And obviously following that is a big feast. And a whole bunch of dignitaries and elders go with him, ignorant of what his actual intentions are. And he told people, and he sent them throughout the land. He said, whenever we get to Hebron, whenever you get the signal, you announce Absalom is king in Israel. And they do. And when that happens, the people that are gathered with him, by default, it's going to be thought of them that they have abandoned David and they have sided with Absalom. So when that happens, Absalom is more or less declared king. The word gets back to David. David says, we all got to get out of here, and we got to get out of here quick because that dude killed his own brother, and there's no telling what he's going to do with us. So he took all of his servants. He took a band of Philistine warriors that he had flocked to his banner over the years, and he left only 10 concubines at the palace to take care of the house, to tend to the house is what it said. And then he lit off on his own with everything else. And on his way, and I'm going to mess up the name. Word comes to him that Ahithophel, one of his most trusted advisors, who was probably the grandfather of Bathsheba, has left his banner and joined with Absalom. And then while he is about to cross over the river, he looks at the two priests, Ziba, and I forget the other name. It'll come up here in a little bit, but I forget the other name right now. Forgive me. And he says, do not take the ark. We're not dragging the ark through the wilderness. You take the ark of the covenant of the Lord back to Jerusalem. Go put it back where it belongs. Maybe God will smile on me while he is judging me in the wilderness and will eventually bring me back to Jerusalem, but we're not going to take the ark out here and subject it to all of this. So they take the ark back there. Their two sons act as spies for David, and he says, whatever happens over there, they can make their way out while the two of you are attending to your priestly duties. And then at the very end, I think of the last chapter, I can't remember when it was, Hushai the Archite comes to him, which is another trusted advisor, and he ends up looking at him. David says, you know what? It would be more convenient for me, and we think he's old. He's probably a little older, and the life in the wilderness was not for him. But David more or less says it would be a much better use of your skills and talents and your position if you would go back to Jerusalem and be a spy for me and defeat the counsel of Ahithophel, who is a very trusted advisor. I need you in there saying that everything that he advises the king to do is dumb, and I need that from you. And the guy says, okay, I'm your guy. And I believe that's pretty much where we left off. That's exactly where we left off. Boom. All right, we're caught up. So 2 Samuel 16, looking at verses 1 through 4. And when David was a little past the top of the hill, behold, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of asses saddled, and upon them 200 loaves of bread, and 100 bunches of raisins, and 100 of summer fruits, and a bottle of wine. And the king said unto Ziba, what meanest thou by these? And Ziba said, these asses be for the king's household to ride on, and the bread and summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine that such as be faint in the wilderness may drink. And the king said, and where is thy master's son? And Ziba said unto the king, behold, he abideth at Jerusalem. For he said, today shall the house of Israel restore me the kingdom of my father. Then said the king to Ziba, behold, thine are all that pertained unto Mephibosheth. And Ziba said, I humbly beseech thee that I may find grace in thy sight, my lord, O king. Now this is an interesting little episode, and it's the kind of thing that it's easy to read and just fly over without realizing what's happening right here. When David was proceeding along barefoot, crying, out into the wilderness, he encounters Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth. Now, in case you don't remember Ziba, he was a steward for the house of King Saul. And he had a decent bit of money, a little bit of influence, a little bit of power, a good station. He had 15 sons, he had 20 servants. And when David came to power at the very initial outset of his reign, he sought out any heir of Jonathan and Saul, because David had made an oath to Jonathan that he would remember his household. And he said, is there anybody left of this household that I may keep this oath to Jonathan? And Mephibosheth was found. Remember, Mephibosheth is the one that when he was 5, his nursemaid was taking him up and running out of the city when it was under siege, and she dropped him, and apparently it was a catastrophic drop because it crippled him in both of his feet, and he didn't walk going forward. So this guy, Ziba, is the one who was appointed from the house of Saul. Again, he was the steward of the house of Saul. He was appointed as the head servant to Mephibosheth, as the steward of Saul's estate, for the intent of providing for Mephibosheth, who was going to eat at King David's table the whole time. But Ziba is looking over his lands and looking over his day-to-day affairs in the name of Mephibosheth for him. So this guy had a decent position before King David. He had a decent position when King David came to the throne, and now it looks like he's very much vying for a better position now that David is on his way out. And it's subtle, but look what happens. David's well on his journey. Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, meets him and his household, and he's got 2 donkeys, 200 loaves of bread, 100 bunches of raisins, 100 clusters of figs, and a bottle of wine. And David says, what's all this? And Ziba says, this is all for you and for all of your company to refresh you as you go along. And David says, that's neat. Where's Mephibosheth? Because when he says thy master, it refers to Saul. He's talking about who's Saul. He's like, where is the master? Where is Saul's son/grandson? The words are somewhat used interchangeably. And Ziba tells David, Mephibosheth has stayed in Jerusalem. He lies to David about the reason for it. He tells him Mephibosheth has stayed because he hopes that today shall the house of Israel restore me the kingdom of my father. He tells David Mephibosheth stayed behind because he thinks he might be king. And he doesn't mean made king by Absalom. That wouldn't make any sense. Absalom just took the throne. He's not about to install somebody else. He's saying that Mephibosheth is banking on David and Absalom wiping each other out. That this house that's divided against itself will not stand. And when it's fallen, and when all the dust settles, the people of Israel will restore Mephibosheth, the only remaining heir to the line of Saul, will restore him to the throne. And when David hears this, he looks at Ziba and he says, everything that was Mephibosheth's is now yours. By whatever power David had to proclaim it then, and whatever power he still has, he had given Mephibosheth everything that was Saul's back when he discovered him. Now he's given it all to Ziba, who humbly and graciously accepts it. Now it's a good while before we find out in the account that wasn't what happened at all. But that is the lie that Ziba has spun to David right now. So y'all remember this episode, because it's going to be a little while before we get to before David returns to Jerusalem and actually encounters Mephibosheth. And then we see Mephibosheth hasn't left his house, hasn't bathed, hasn't shaved. The dude let himself go into almost a complete mourning mode because David, who was so kind to him when he had no reason to be kind to him, was in exile. So Mephibosheth was on complete lockdown. He's tore up that this is happening to David, but that's not what Ziba tells David here. So y'all put a pin in this. Remember it, mark it in your Bible if you got to, because it's going to be a little while before we come back to it. Verses 5 through 8. And when King David came to Bahurim, behold, thence came out a man of the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. He came forth and cursed still as he came, and he cast stones at David and at all the servants of King David, and all the people and all the mighty men were on his right hand and on his left. And thus said Shimei when he cursed, come out, thou bloody man, and thou man of Belial. The Lord hath returned upon thee all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose stead thou hast reigned, and the Lord hath delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom thy son. And behold, thou art taken in thy mischief, because thou art a bloody man. David and his company come to a place called Bahurim. And Bahurim is lost to time. We have no way of telling where exactly this was or how far they have traveled at this point. But as they're walking, a man of the house of Saul, and what they mean by that is it's of the tribe of Saul. It's a Benjamite comes out. It's somebody who is harboring a grudge against David and against David's house because he feels that the throne has been taken away from its rightful owner, that being Saul and the tribe of Benjamin. This guy Shimei comes out, and for lack of a better phrase, he seems to have David derangement syndrome. I think that's the best way to put it. Because even with David's royal guard, and it goes out of its way to say this right here, David's royal guard, all of his mighty men on his right hand, all of his mighty men on his left hand, even with all of that, this guy, because of some imagined slight against his tribe, not him, he hasn't been personally hurt by this, but some imagined slight and insult against his tribe, he still makes his way out there cussing at David and throwing stones. And I say he has David derangement syndrome because the risk reward on what he's doing here is way off. There's no way he's going to hurt David. He's just throwing stones. And the man has hundreds of men around him. He's too well protected. At best, he's just going to annoy him, maybe get a little clout with the townsfolk whenever he goes back to his town and say, yeah, I cussed him real good. I threw stones at him. They'll be like, all right, you're the man. I knew you would. You're crazy. Come on back over here. We'll buy you a drink. He might get that out of this, but on the other hand, there's a very real possibility of Shimei getting killed for assaulting the outgoing king in the middle of his royal guard. He's cussing and throwing stones. And David is surrounded by his personal guard, which is a bunch of Philistines who don't have any qualms about killing somebody like this, as they're about to say. He's got to be nuts to do this. And he's throwing stones at David and his men, and he calls out, come out, thou bloody man of Belial. Come out from your kingdom, get out, be gone. He's calling him into exile. He says, you deserve all of this because you are a murderer. And we've seen the phrase, you man of Belial. We've seen people called men of Belial before, and it's not accusing him of idolatry. It's not saying he's actually worshiping a pagan idol at all. It's calling him it's a generic term for a wicked person. As David, for all his faults, never fell to pagan idolatry in that way. And Shimei added, the Lord is avenging upon you all the blood you have shed of the house of Saul. So again, keeping in mind, this guy is a Benjamite with blind loyalty to the house of Saul. And he could rightly call David a man of blood or a bloody man for what he did to Uriah the Hittite. But that's not where Shimei's mind is right now. He's calling David a bloody man because of Saul and his sons dying at Gilboa, which was a great battle against the Philistines. The death of Abner. Remember what happened to Abner? He was stabbed in the gates by Joab, David's general. Ishbosheth, the king who was competing with David for a while there. David had Hebron. Ishbosheth had all of Israel and eventually was beheaded by one of his own men. All the deaths that David had absolutely no hand in is what this guy is essentially accusing him of. Those are the deaths that he would really hold close to the chest because those were all the deaths of the line of Saul. Well, David didn't really do any of those things, but this guy is still out there cussing him and throwing stones and accusing him of these things. It's like it's David derangement syndrome. He's built up the enemy of David within his own mind and what David has actually done, and he hasn't really done any of it. David denounced those deaths, executed the guys that beheaded Ishbosheth in his own bed. This guy didn't care, though. In his eyes, this mischief is befalling David because David directly led to the death of Saul and all of Saul's line, and that's the only conclusion he cares about here. Verses 9 through 14. Yes. Yeah, it was. Yeah, when the prophet came out there and said, "Thou art the man," and it was a public humiliation. Well, if you ain't been living under a rock, you know what he did. Verses 9 through 14. Then said Abishai the son of Zeruiah unto the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over, I pray thee, and take off his head. And the king said, what have I to do with you, ye sons of Zeruiah? So let him curse, because the Lord hath said unto him, curse David. Who shall then say, wherefore hast thou done so? And David said to Abishai and to all his servants, behold, my son, which came forth of my bowels, seeketh my life. How much more now may this Benjamite do it? Let him alone, and let him curse, for the Lord hath bidden him. It may be that the Lord will look on mine affliction, and that the Lord will requite me good for his cursing this day. And as David and his men went by the way, Shimei went along on the hillside over against him, and cursed as he went, and threw stones at him, and cast dust. And the king and all the people that were with him came weary and refreshed themselves there. You got to love Abishai. Abishai's all vinegar. This is the same guy, and you may not remember, back in 1 Samuel 26. 1 Samuel 26:7. That night David and Abishai came to the troops, and Saul was lying there asleep in the inner circle of the camp with his spear stuck in the ground by his head, and Abner and the troops were lying around him. Abishai said to David, "Today God has delivered your enemy into your hand. Now therefore, please let me thrust the spear through him into the ground with one stroke. I will not need to strike him twice." But David said to Abishai, "Do not destroy him, for who can lift a hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless?" This guy has no problem throwing down for David. So just like I said, David derangement syndrome, for David to be surrounded by guys just like this guy's got to be crazy to come out there cussing and throwing stones. Because he sees Shimei cursing and throwing stones at his king, and he says, "Why should this dead dog," and it doesn't get any lower than that. Dogs are already detestable. Dead things are unclean. This is an unclean, detestable thing. Why should this dead dog, this wretched thing, be allowed to curse King David? And he said, "Please, let me go take his head for you. Please." It would be the highlight of it. It would be the only nice point to the day. We've been out here leaving Jerusalem. You're barefoot. Everybody's crying. Let me go do this one thing just to brighten the mood a little bit. And David replies, "What have I to do with you, ye sons of Zeruiah?" What does him cursing me have to do with you? How does him cursing me reflect on you? He's not cursing you. I don't reflect on you. He's cursing me. God has brought me to the point where I am so detestable that I should be cursed like this. David's saying that by divine providence, I have become something worthy of being cursed because of my sin. So let him curse. Who are we to call God's will into question here? And then David turns to the whole procession there, and he says, "Listen, guys, my own son is trying to kill me right now. My own son is after my head. You understand? You think Shimei's cursing really bothers me? My son's trying to kill me right now. This man just happens to be a divinely appointed instrument of my own torment. The Lord has bid him to curse and taunt me, and it may well be that the Lord sees the humility with which I handle this situation and this punishment and chooses to have mercy on me at some point. I don't know, but we're not going to take his head." And apparently his complete lack of a reaction inflamed Shimei even more, and the Benjamite followed the procession along, continuing to throw stones and curse as they make their way. We don't know if it's into the city of Bahurim or if into a different city here. We assume it's into this city, but we don't know if this is still the same city they're talking about, because it says, "And they made their way there, and they began to take their rest." So it's an assumption to say they went into Bahurim. We don't really know. Verses 15 through 19. "And Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel with him. And it came to pass, when Hushai the Archite, David's friend, was coming to Absalom, that Hushai said unto Absalom, God save the king! God save the king! And Absalom said to Hushai, Is this thy kindness to thy friend? Why wentest thou not with thy friend? And Hushai said unto Absalom, Nay, but whom the Lord and his people and all the men of Israel choose, his will I be, and with him will I abide. And again, whom should I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of his son, as I have served in thy father's presence? So will I be in thy presence. So Absalom and his procession finally arrive in Israel, in Jerusalem, to a relatively empty palace. Again, he left behind a few concubines to help the house, but the servants and the soldiers have all gone. And he's got Ahithophel with him, the wise man, who most likely the grandfather of Bathsheba. And soon after they all get in there, Hushai the Archite, the old man that David sent to go and defeat the council of Ahithophel, that man arrives. And Hushai the Archite, he wastes no time. Hushai goes straight up to Absalom and he says, God save the king. And then one more time for good measure, God save the king, because he really means it. He's trying to ingratiate himself automatically to the new king, to get in good, just like David wanted him to do. But Absalom is not immediately buying it. He's not saying he doesn't, but he's not immediately. He's got a couple questions. He looked at Hushai and he says, is this the way you show kindness to your friend David? Why didn't you go with David? I'm shocked that you're here right now saying God save the king. And Hushai tells him in verses 18 and 19, God has chosen you, King Absalom. The people have chosen you as king. Whatever I might like to do, whoever my friends might be, I am bound by duty, bound by divine appointment to serve whom God and the people have chosen for the goodness of the nation of Israel. So just like I served fathers before you, I will serve you. Yes, I'm friends with David. I'm not going to deny that. But you're king now, so you have my loyalty. Verses 20 through 23. Then said Absalom to Ahithophel, give counsel among you what we should do. And Ahithophel said unto Absalom, go in unto thy father's concubines, which he hath left to keep the house. And all Israel shall hear that thou art abhorred of thy father. Then shall the hands of all that are with thee be strong. So they spread Absalom a tent upon the top of the house, and Absalom went in unto his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. And the counsel of Ahithophel, which he counseled in those days, was as if a man had inquired at the oracle of God. So was all the counsel of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom. So Absalom looks around at his wise men, presumably more than just Ahithophel and Hushai. He looks at his counsel here. And he says, all right, guys, we're here. We've got the palace. I'm king now. What's our first move? And Ahithophel is the head counselor. He was the head counselor for David. He's the head counselor for Absalom here. He's the one that gets the last say. It's a little ambiguous, but for the sake of the argument, Absalom may have just looked at Ahithophel and asked him alone what he should do, but it more sounds like he asked the whole council, and then Ahithophel as the one that's actually speaking up. Regardless, Ahithophel's counsel is that Absalom should claim his father's harem. He should go in unto his father's concubines. And yes, that sounds distasteful to us, but consider what this means in the bigger picture. First, keep in mind, it's not regarded as incestuous or completely improper by the Israelites. It was customary that a king, even from father to son, that a king would inherit his predecessor's harem. Again, it was culturally detestable, but culturally expected. But this is crossing a line, a point at which there's no return. Once you've done something like that, there's no patching up the relationship here. It's burning the ships. Y'all remember when I talked about that in a sermon one time in the 1500s. Cortez landed in Veracruz to conquer the Americas, and he turned around and he looked at his men and he ordered them all to burn the ships. He said, we're not going back. We're going to succeed or die out here. But he ordered them to burn the ships. That's what this is. They're committing themselves to the task at hand. There's no turning back. Ahithophel is concerned that at some point Absalom and his claim to the throne might falter a little bit. There might be some cracks in the foundation of it. He might find himself running into difficulty with the people or with the neighboring enemies that David had subdued for so long. He might in the future want to seek David out and cut a deal and say, you know what, this isn't working out this well. We're father and son. We should patch things up, find some kind of congenial way to reach a deal and work his way back into David's graces and let David have the throne back. This would preclude all of that, this move right here. And what's crazy, to me at least, is David didn't see this coming somehow. I don't know how he didn't see this coming. Why do I say that? Because he was warned. He was told, I'd say fairly directly, the prophet Samuel passed judgment on the house of David that the sword would not depart from his house. And in 2 Samuel 12:11, thus saith the Lord, behold, I will raise up evil against thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thine eyes and give them unto thy neighbor, and he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of this sun. Even knowing that, and having seen the sword descend on his house, And knowing that that was still out there, he still left 10 concubines behind at his house to take care of the palace. That seems like a poor move in my mind. Never thinking that they would be used in fulfillment of this prophecy somehow. And I don't get that. But Ahithophel counsels Absalom to go in unto his father's concubines because it will render their relationship irreparable. That's it. There's no way back. And the hands of Absalom's servants will be strengthened in the knowledge that they must succeed because there is no retreat. And Absalom did it. Absalom heeded the counsel of Ahithophel. And on the very roof where David was walking along when he initially saw Bathsheba and that seed of sin was planted, on that very same roof, they spread a tent and he claimed the harem. And it says under the sun, and everybody knew it. It's a tent. They all knew what was going on in there. It was not a lewd public display or anything, but everybody knew what was going on. And the counsel of Ahithophel is described as in those days being as though man had inquired of the oracle of God. How does it say? And the counsel of Ahithophel, which he counseled in those days, was as if a man had inquired at the oracle of God. So was all the counsel of Ahithophel, both with David and Absalom. Now, that's not saying that he was never wrong. It's not talking about accuracy. It's talking about weight. It's talking about when this man spoke, it's like you were hearing a prophet speak. It's like you were hearing the oracle of God. It's like somebody had just cast the Urim and the Thummim. This man's word was gospel. What's that media personality from decades ago? It's like when he speaks, everyone listens. There we go, E.F. Hutton, all right? That's what they're talking about. And that's not saying that E.F. Hutton was always right, but what he said carried weight with it. That's what they're talking about here. So, next page. The people felt that there was a substance to his counsel that may or may not have really been there. It was heavy by the atmosphere of things, by the weight of what was going on. It was treated as though it was from God, whether or not it actually was from God, which this certainly was not of God. It was allowed by God as a divine punishment, but was not of God. God's not the author of this evil like this. 2 Samuel now. Oh, that was the end of it. Dang. I guess we are moving on. 2 Samuel 17, looking at verses 1 through 4. Moreover, Ahithophel said unto Absalom, Let me now choose out 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue after David this night. And I will come upon him while he is weary and weak-handed, and will make him afraid, and all the people that are with him shall flee, and I will smite the king only. And I will bring back all the people unto thee. The man whom thou seekest is as if all returned. So all the people shall be in peace. And the saying pleased Absalom well in all the elders of Israel. So in addition to advising Absalom to seize the harem of the former king, Ahithophel looks at him and says, why don't you let me, while we're at it, while we're here, while he's not too far away, I'll take 12,000 men. We'll go and hunt David down right now, and we'll put an end to his reign. It says, pursue after David this night. This is presumed to be the same evening of the same day that Absalom arrived and David had taken flight. So the company wouldn't have gotten very far away. And Absalom hopes to be able to catch up to them in the middle of the night, create confusion in the ranks, be able to easily single David out and dispatch of David alone and bring everybody else back. And he can bring all the people and the subjects of the kingdom back, and we can avoid a civil war. We can avoid, like a long, drawn-out conflict between two halves of our city. And his counsel pleased Absalom and all the elders that were gathered there. Now, verses 5 through 13. There's a little longer passage here. Then said Absalom, Call now Hushai the Archite also, and let us hear likewise what he saith. And when Hushai was come to Absalom, Absalom spake unto him, saying, Ahithophel hath spoken after this manner. Shall we do after his saying? If not, speak thou. And Hushai said unto Absalom, The counsel that Ahithophel hath given is not good at this time. For, said Hushai, Thou knowest thy father and his men, that they be mighty men, and they be chafed in their minds, as a bear robbed of her whelps in the field. And thy father is a man of war, and will not lodge with the people. Behold, he is hid now in some pit or in some other place, and it will come to pass, when some of them be overthrown at the first, that whosoever heareth it will say, there is a slaughter among the people that follow Absalom. And he also that is valiant, whose heart is as the heart of a lion, shall utterly melt. For all Israel knoweth that thy father is a mighty man, and they which be with him are valiant men. Therefore I counsel that all Israel be generally gathered unto thee, from Dan even to Beersheba, as the sand that is by the sea for multitude, and that thou go to battle in thine own person. So shall we come upon him in some place where he shall be found, and we will light upon him as the dew falleth on the ground, and of him and of all the men that are with him there shall not be left so much as one. Moreover, if he be gotten into a city, then shall all Israel bring ropes to that city, and we will draw it into the river until there be not one small stone found there. So this was an important matter. Absalom had heard from Ahithophel, but he says, you know what? Maybe it might be wise to get another voice in on this thing. So they're talking about killing the former king, right? The beloved shepherd of Israel. So Absalom, in a display of wisdom, decides to seek the opinion of one other advisor. So he calls for Hushai the Archite, the spy that David sent into the throne to intentionally negate whatever Ahithophel says. And they tell Hushai what Ahithophel thinks Absalom should go do, and Absalom says, what do you think about this advice? And Hushai, I'm going to mess these names up eventually, yeah. Hushai says, that's a horrible idea. Are you serious you're about to go do that? That's dumb. And he looked at Absalom and he said, you know your dad. You know his men. They're warriors. And right now, and I love this, right now they're chafed. They are chafed in their minds. They're probably chafed in David walking barefoot through the wilderness. They're probably actually chafed too, but they are chafed in their minds. They're like a mama bear without her cubs, backed into a corner, threatened, and they are mighty, valiant men. And David, being the man of war that he is, likely won't even be camped with the rest of the company. A midnight invasion will probably not cause the confusion that you're thinking it will. Mark my words, David's going to be out there in a defensible position somewhere, and you might overpower him eventually with sheer numbers, but there's no avoiding it. He's going to take a lot of your soldiers down with him. Even if your soldiers are the bravest of the brave, they will eventually melt against David, and it's going to get back to your men that there's a great slaughter among those that follow Absalom. Then in verse 11, Hushai says, what you need to do is wait. And that was really the point of Hushai's advice. He wants to give David ample time to gather himself, to defend himself, to not be caught on the run. He's really just vying for time here. So Hushai says, wait, gather up all the tribes of Israel to you in Jerusalem, and then you King Absalom, you go out personally with a detachment of the finest soldiers of all the tribes, and we can advance against David like the dew on the ground. And what does that mean? That means quietly, everywhere, all at once. We do it like that, we can wipe David and all his valiant men out with ease. We'll have enough men and enough force that even if David has made it into a city for his own defense, we'll be able to swiftly lay siege to a city even. Verses 14 through 16. And Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the counsel of Hushai the Archite is better than the counsel of Ahithophel. For the Lord had appointed to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel, to the intent that the Lord might bring evil upon Absalom. Then said Hushai unto Zadok and to Abiathar the priest, thus and thus did Ahithophel counsel Absalom and the elders of Israel, and thus have I counseled. Now therefore send quickly and tell David, saying, lodge not this night in the plains of the wilderness, but speedily pass over, lest the king be swallowed up and all the people that are with him. So the king, Absalom, and all his advisors liked Hushai's plan better than Ahithophel's. God pushed their minds and their hearts towards it. Just like he hardened Pharaoh's heart, he's swaying them towards this. It says in verse 14, for the Lord had appointed to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel. Now get that. It's the good counsel of Ahithophel. This dude was giving good advice. This was the time to strike David. If they were going to put an end to this right then, that was the time to do it. His plan probably would have worked. They would have caught David in the middle of the night having no real rest because he abandoned the palace and left just as soon as he had word of what Absalom had done. And Hushai's plan is actually better for David, but it appeals to the vanity of King Absalom. King Absalom says, you know what? Getting a detachment of all Israel and going up there and leading the army myself does sound a lot better. He's appealing to his vanity here, which you got to remember. Absalom, what do we know about Absalom? Huh? Arrogant. He's pretty. Yeah. This is the dude that head to toe does not have a blemish on him, gets his hair cut once a year, and donates, and I forget how much was it. Y'all remember me saying how much? They weighed it in shekels. If it was by the royal shekel, it was like 8 or 10 pounds of hair that the guy would get rid of once a year. That's a lot of hair. This guy is beautiful with long flowing hair, and he's liking the thought of himself on a mule or a camel or whatever they would ride in war or something like that. I don't know what he would ride in war. I know donkeys are a much more noble steed than you would think they were, but I don't know if they actually used camels back then, specifically for this, I mean. Huh? A stallion? Sure. Maybe a goat. Side by side. Little Ford Ranger? I don't know what the guy's driving. Either way, he's liking the thought of himself going out and leading the army here. So, again, Ahithophel's counsel is good. Hushai's plan is better for King David. And Hushai's plan appeals to Absalom's pride. So Hushai goes to the two priests. He goes to Zadok and Abiathar, and he tells them everything that went down. He says, you get word to David, do not camp out in the open in the plains. Head for cover. Cross the Jordan if you can. And he tells them that as a precaution. Because yes, Absalom has sided with him for now, but there's nothing stopping him from looking at all the guards and saying, you know what, halfway through the night, Hushai probably had a good idea. Ahithophel probably had a good idea. Go ahead and do that. So, in light of the fact that he very well may change his mind and decide to end it all now, he sends word to David to find a defensive position. Verses 17 through 19. Now Jonathan and Ahimaaz stayed by Enrogel, for they might not be seen to come into the city. And a wench went and told them, and they went and told King David. Nevertheless, a lad saw them and told Absalom. But they went both of them away quickly and came to a man's house in Bahurim, which had a well in his court, whither they went down. And the woman took and spread a covering over the well's mouth and spread ground corn thereon, and the thing was not known. So Jonathan and Ahimaaz, those are the two sons of the two priests. They're staying in the Kidron Valley, in a little place called Enrogel, just outside the city, because they didn't want to be seen moving in and out and raising people's suspicions whenever all this is going down. It doesn't matter anyway, because they've got enough spies that it says a wench, and if you don't like that word, a maidservant. A maidservant went out, told the guys all the gossip, and they left Enrogel to tell King David what happened, but despite all their precautions, a lad saw them, one of the spies of the city, a young boy saw what was going down, and it says told Absalom, probably didn't tell Absalom directly, but told Absalom's party, his advisors or something like that, the servant. He reported it, is what they're trying to say here. That this young lad said, I saw these two guys going out of the city. I think it's the priest's son. Y'all wanted to be told if I saw anything weird. That seems kind of weird to me. So he reports it, and the jig is up. Jonathan and Ahimaaz, they saw the boy. They knew that they were found out. So they didn't just leave and make a mad dash for David. They go to a nearby friend's house in Bahurim, and they hide in a well, inside an empty cistern, a dry cistern. And the woman there covered the mouth of the well where they hid and spread corn husks all over it so that the well was camouflaged. Verses 20 through 22. And when Absalom's servants came to the woman to the house, they said, Where is Ahimaaz and Jonathan? And the woman said unto them, They be gone over the brook of water. And when they had sought and could not find them, they returned to Jerusalem. And it came to pass after they were departed that they came up out of the well and went and told King David and said unto David, Arise and pass quickly over the water, for thus hath Ahithophel counseled against you. Then David arose, and all the people that were with him, and they passed over Jordan by the morning light. There lacked not one of them that was not gone over Jordan. Absalom's servants get word from the young lad that the two sons of the priests have made their way out of the city, so they go to investigate. They go to the house in pursuit of the two men. They question the woman, and they don't say, "Did you see two guys?" They call them out by name. They say, "Did you see Jonathan and Ahimaaz?" Because they don't have to say, "Did you see two guys coming this way?" These are the two sons of the priests. They're well known. They're known in the city. So we say, "Hey, did you see these two guys?" They can ask them directly. And she says, "Yes, I saw them, but they went that way." Like every Scooby-Doo or Bugs Bunny cartoon you've ever seen. "Oh, yeah, that way." And they've got a little mustache or something. The servants leave from that little town in hot pursuit. They search a little bit. They can't find Jonathan or Ahimaaz. The servants return to Jerusalem. And when Jonathan and Ahimaaz knew the coast was clear, they come up out of the cistern. They go on their way to the camp, David's camp, and they fill him in on everything that's transpiring. And they said, you need to pass quickly over the Jordan because Ahithophel has said that you should be hunted down. The king may yet heed that counsel. We don't really know, but it would be a good idea for you to get out of here and go ahead and get over the Jordan. So David did as they advised. He and his company make their way over the Jordan to relative safely that very night. It says there wasn't a single one left of them by morning that had not crossed over. Then verse 23, something that you may think comes out of nowhere here. Verse 23. And when Ahithophel saw that his counsel was not followed, he saddled his ass and arose and gat him home to his house, to his city, and put his household in order, and hanged himself and died, and was buried in the sepulchre of his father. Did y'all see that coming? No. What happened? So Ahithophel, for all of his faults, was a really smart guy. He really was. And when he saw that his advice was not being followed, it stung. It's a personal insult. But more than that, he's far more concerned that Absalom did not take advantage of what he pretty much thought was his only opportunity to strike David down and solidify this rebellion. So Ahithophel could look forward and see the end coming for him. He surmised how this whole rebellion was going to play out. David's going to make his way away from Absalom. He's going to find himself in a defensible position. He's a better king than Absalom is because that dude's just a pretty boy. This whole thing's going to crack and start to crumble. David would have enough time to rest up and beef up his forces and take back the throne. And in Ahithophel's mind, it's all just a matter of time now. Before David was back in power and Ahithophel would find himself dying a traitor's death, more than likely, for turning his back on his king and siding with the usurper, he decided to take matters into his own hands. Is it they're not? Yes.
You said he's seeing this. Is he actually seeing this?
No.
I mean, or is he just surmising?
He's been in politics long enough, he can see where things are going.
But I mean, he's not seeing these things.
No, he's not divinely touched in any way. No, he's not. I don't, how else should I say that?
Realize?
He's realizing what's going on. He can.
He's just surmising, looking around.
He's like any talking head on Fox or CNN who's looking forward and saying, I know exactly how this battle is playing out. But he's actually smart enough to know how this battle is going to play out here. So instead of waiting for the end to come and waiting for all of this to fall apart and be subject to the circumstances of the time, he decides to saddle his donkey, rides home, writes out a will, says his goodbyes, and then he hangs himself. And he died and he was buried in the sepulchre of his father. Verses 24 through 29. Then David came to Mahanaim, and Absalom passed over Jordan, he and all the men of Israel with him. And Absalom made Amasa captain of the host instead of Joab, which Amasa was a man's son whose name was Ithra, an Israelite, that went into Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, sister to Zeruiah, Joab's mother. Wow. So Israel and Absalom pitched in the land of Gilead. And it came to pass when David was come to Mahanaim that Shobai, the son of Nahash of Rabbah of the children of Ammon, and Machir, the son of Amiel of Lodabar, and Barzillai the Gileadite of Rogelim, brought beds and basins and earthen vessels and wheat and barley and flour and parched corn and beans and lentils and parched pulse and honey and butter and sheep and cheese of kine for David and for the people that were with him to eat, for they said, the people is hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. David eventually made his way to the city of Mahanaim, which was the strongest city in the region where they crossed the Jordan. And it's the same city that Ishbosheth chose as his capital whenever he was set up as king, opposite King David, who was ruling in Hebron. So it is a well-fortified city and a strategic city here. And eventually, after he gets set up in that city, Absalom and the men that he had gathered passed over the Jordan as well in pursuit of David. And by context, we believe a decent amount of time would have passed between these two events here. This is not all, again, same night or next night or something like that. A good bit of time has passed here. And since Joab, David's general, sided with David and left with David, Absalom needed a new general, and he appointed Amasa, who was actually one of David's nephews and one of Joab's cousins. And I had a family tree, and I didn't print it out. Maybe I should go back to using slides or something like that. But just take my word for it. Cousins, nephews, they were related there. And while Absalom and his men were camped in Gilead, just east of the Jordan, David and his men wall up in Mahanaim, and they start receiving aid. People start showing up to show support for King David and his men. And they're giving him beds, and they're giving him food, and they're giving him cheese, and they're giving him wine, and they're giving him all sorts of stuff here, livestock and supplies from all over. And notably, of the names that we see here, Machir of Lodabar pitched in some supplies. And Machir of Lodabar, the last time we saw that name, this is the guy that was giving refuge to Mephibosheth. Whenever David said, is there an heir left of the line of Saul? They said, yeah, there's Mephibosheth. Well, where is he at? He's staying with this guy named Machir of Lodabar. Even though Mephibosheth couldn't do anything for him, the guy, out of sheer generosity and love, pulled him into his household, pulled a cripple into his household, a cripple with a claim to the throne, which is inviting all sorts of trouble to your house. Even still, he put him up and saw to it. And now that David is on the run and finds himself defending it up in a city here, Machir again shows up. You got to love this guy too. He's nothing but generosity. It doesn't matter what your situation is. He always shows up in a pinch with something to help out. So here he is partly repaying David the kindness that he showed Mephibosheth. He is supplying David with supplies because this poor crippled young man that he took in so long ago, David took him, and when he culturally would have been justified in doing the worst, David treated him with nothing but grace and love because of the oath that he had made to Jonathan. And so we have Machir coming back with a number of other people, but it shows that David's not alone in this fight. People are flocking from all over to make sure that he and his people are well supplied, because by the look of it, at this time, when everybody is surmising things, it looks like the city may be under siege at some point here, and they may need those supplies. That's 16 and 17. Questions? Good.